Hey folks, Russ Bailey here. It's time for another BrushPile Fishing, the video podcast. As you can see, I've got some mountains in the background. I'm here at beautiful Dale Hollow. We're actually here for our media camp. It's an annual event. Denny from Dale Hollow Marine and Cedar Hill Marine, he puts us up, and I'll tell you what, it's just a great time. We're enjoying some warm weather. Some of the best outdoor riders in the country are here, and we're spending time on the water, promoting some new products from our sponsors. So it's just been a great time. But I want to take this time to do a video podcast and talk about the Ohio fishing coming up in the month of May. So you stay tuned. We'll be back with BrushPile Fishing, the video podcast. All right, folks, going solo today. As you know, the month of May is fast approaching. Maybe by the time this airs, we'll be in the first week of May. But Ohio, this is prime time. You know, we've had one very good week of warm weather in April, and the fishing in St. Mary's that week was absolutely on fire. Now, any of you guys that fish St. Mary's, we're going to talk about a couple different Ohio lakes, but anyone that fished St. Mary's last year knew that we were on that down cycle. And it was tough. I mean, it was tough to get 9-inch fish. Numbers were down. And it seems like with St. Mary's being one of those shallow lakes, you know, we're 5-6 foot all the way across. Again, this lake was hand dug in the 1800s, and it just seems that we go in cycles every 5-6 years maybe. And last year was definitely the down year of one of those cycles. We've had some good spawns, and that warm week that we had in April, you know, me and my buddy Tom Peterson, we went out several times. And oh my gosh, there were days it was just every single cast you were catching crappie. Now, the good news is we're catching a lot of keeper fish. And in Ohio, of course, we've got the 9-inch limit. That was not a problem. Anytime that we've been out, we've caught a lot of 10 and 11-inch fish. An occasional 12, nothing bigger. I know they had a tournament just a week or so ago, and there was one weighed in, I think, a pound 2.7 or somewhere around there. So we're not getting those pound-plus fish consistently like we're used to in the spring. But like I say, all the 10, 11-inch fish you want, if you're wanting to clean some or just have fun, you know what? St. Mary's is a great place to go. Typical way we're fishing for them right now. You guys have seen the small floats we use, fishing anywhere from 6 inches deep down to about 2 foot at the deepest right now. And the thing is, the month of May, you can get them in so many places. You guys know I love fishing aluminum lifts, but we've got a lot of buried brush around people's docks that they put in. So you've got brush piles, you've got the aluminum lifts, the rocks in the month of May, the riprap that we have. Outstanding. And as we get towards the end of May and the water really starts to warm up, one of the last places I like to hit before the hot summer months gets here is the seawalls themselves. We've got those cement seawalls, and it just seems like later in that spring, for whatever reason, I don't know if it's because the moss on there and the minnows are in there, but they like congregating, on those seawalls. But like I say, the month of May, St. Mary's, get those corks. As far as colors, jigs, and everything, I stick with a 1/32 jig head. Sometimes I'm using the eye hole 1/32. Sometimes it's the double cross. Here lately, my favorite combination is the pink jig head, and then I'm using a color called Fast Lane by Crappie magnet. Fast Lane, to me, it's got like a purplish blue tint with some pearl in it. Outstanding color almost anywhere I go. You know, I was at a veterans tournament in Shelbyville a couple weeks ago, and that color was on fire there. I fished with Brian Cleveland. By the end of the day, that's all we had on, him and I both, and just, you know, killing them on those things. I like the slab magnet myself. As you know, a lot of guys like the smaller baits. Go to that regular crappie magnet then. That double tail, they've got that in the Fast Lane. Again, a 1/32 ounce jig head. A pink head with that, for whatever reason, is an awesome combination on St. Mary's. Indian Lake, switch gears a little bit. Indian Lake's going to be about the same thing now. As you know, in the past couple of years, we've had some problems with Indian Lake. The zebra mussels have infested, and it was just like Lake Erie when they infested years ago. Everything cleared up so fast that you could see 6-7 foot down in the bottom. And I mean, you've seen every rock or every pebble. And what that's did, it's allowed that sunlight to penetrate, and it has just been overran with weeds. And I'm not just talking in the channels where we like to fish, but on the main lake. I don't know if we can get some video for this podcast, but last summer I saw a lot of overhead shots from drones, and you couldn't even run a boat on the main lake. I know a lot of people did try that, and their boats overheated. It was an absolute mess. I know the state's working on some things now. I don't know how far they gotten or what their plan is actually to address it, but hopefully they're getting a good grip on it, because Indian Lake is one of those fisheries that is just awesome year in and year out, not just for crappie fishermen. Yellow perch, the yellow perch fishing there is great. And of course, for years, saugeye fishing is second to none in the state. And it just makes it so tough when you can't even get a jig in between some of these weeds. I know I've changed my patterns that I fish here. I don't fish tournaments much anymore at all, but every year I like to fish with my buddies, Gary James and Brian Christopher, in the state FOP tournament. And the last couple of years, the spots that I normally fish for that, we can't even get in there because of the weeds. So you can still catch some real quality fish. You've just got to change some of those areas, and you got to get it quick, because as that water warms up, if it stays clear, the fishing's going to be done early, because you just don't want to tear your boats up with all the weeds overheating and everything like that. So let's hope they get a grip on Indian Lake. I want to talk about another lake, Buckeye Lake. Now, as you guys know, back in the tournament days, I loved Buckeye. I had a spot on there for 2 years in the tournament trail. No one knew we were back there, and me and my partner just absolutely wore them out back there. We were winning some tournaments by 2 pounds. So it was incredible. Eventually, everybody figured out where we were fishing, and it's a community hole now. But my son Wyatt and I, we went there last May. That show's going to air here real soon on BrushPile Fishing. But we went there. We fished the same way we did at St. Mary's. We took the small corks. Now, when you're cork fishing, when I do it in shallow water, I want a cork just barely big enough to hold up whatever jig size I'm using. I don't like an oversized cork or bobber, whatever you want to call it. Crappie Magnet has the Trout Series floats is what I like to use with that 1/32. They have a panfish float, but to me, that's too big for the 1/32. I don't like the way it lays, or if it's a finicky bite, I don't like the action it gives a jig. I want that smaller cork, so I'll use the Trout Series float. And me and my son, we went to Buckeye last year. Like I say, I think it was the second week of May. And if you want to talk about having a great time on an Ohio lake, for kids, for adults, it didn't matter. Buckeye is going to be the same this year. The month of May is outstanding. We're fishing the same way that we just talked about in St. Mary's. Again, now I've got some color combinations work real well. Black and chartreuse has always been a staple for Buckeye Lake. Give that one a try. You're not going to be disappointed. But another one, you guys know I like my pink jig heads. The pink jig head I'm putting on with the Butler Gold tail from Crappie Magnet. That is a deadly combination. Last year, I'm not even sure I switched during that show. I may have just a switch jigs, but it was outstanding. So again, the Butler Gold tail, you put that with a pink jig head, fishing normally 18 inches or so. And I'm going to tell you a spot, that spot I was talking about, it's Heron Bay. Outstanding in the spring. You'll know you're in the right spot, because when you pull into Heron Bay, there's all these houses. They're all the same color. They look like they start at about $750,000. I can remember taking my wife there for the first time. We pull into this bay, and she's looking at all these houses thinking, oh my goodness. And I'm seeing hundreds of aluminum lifts, and that's what I'm thinking. It's like, oh my goodness, these lifts. But Heron Bay offers everything for you back there. There's big bluegills, there's crappie, there's saugeye back there. But what I love to fish, the aluminum lifts, and don't give up on some of the smaller lifts. Everybody goes to the big boat lifts. I go to some of the jet ski lifts. Sometimes they hold the biggest fish. So when you pull in there, you're going to see lift after lift after lift. Outstanding spring cover in the spring. But the other thing is you've got rocky shorelines. Those crappie will spawn on there, especially the black crappie. And during the month of May, you want to talk about beautiful fish. The color on these things, they're outstanding. And again, just throwing that jig and cork, you'll have an absolute ball. There's also a lot of wooden docks back there. Now, I catch fish off the wood also, but you guys know me long enough now that if I've got aluminum and I've got a wooden dock right next to it, I'm hitting that aluminum every single time. Buckeye Lake, shallow water fishing the month of May. Again, outstanding to fish. The last one I want to talk about, I haven't fished a lot. I fished it back in the tournament days, and then last year I started fishing a little bit with my buddy Ben Grumbles. Ben actually got me fishing back on Alum Creek, and Alum offers a lot for you now. A lot of laydowns there, a lot of shallow water brush, so you can use that same technique. Stay back off of it because it's a little bit clearer water than what I'm used to in St. Mary's. So we'll back off that a little bit, throw that jig and cork. But also last year I went with Ben one time. We were out in deeper water and we were live scoping single fish. And I'm going to tell you, going back to that fast lane, that's a color I would have never used a whole lot years ago. But here the last 2 seasons, man, it's been outstanding for me. Pink head, I went with a bigger jig head, a 1/8 ounce, and we were chasing those single fish. And what I put on that was the big slab magnet fast lane. And it's a bigger body bait. I love fishing with those. When you're at Alum Creek, make sure you've got some of those in a boat. And that's what I would start with because it has always been good for me there. Made several trips over there. I actually got to fish with BrushPile Buzz over there a couple times, but that color was outstanding. Luckily, the trips that I went over there, it wasn't muddy, real nice clear water. But that one gives you a few more options than St. Mary's or Buckeye does because it's got deep water. Those other lakes we talked about here today, those are shallow water lakes, but Alum gives you a little bit of deep water. It's got everything. You can pull crankbaits, you can pull jigs. So you have so many different options there. So Ohio, the month of May, I wanted to talk about this on the podcast because this is our month. You know, in the South, everything heats up a little bit quicker. Some of that's going into the summer pattern. Our best springtime spawning fish shows or techniques are just coming up now. So the state of Ohio, folks, this is the time to get out there. Normally the weather's going to straighten out a little bit. You know, we've had ups and downs in the month of April, but make sure you try some of these Ohio lakes that we talked about. Use the techniques, and I hope it works for you. Love fishing this time of year. And before we close things out, folks, just want to remind you about our BrushPile app. So stay tuned for this message. The new BrushPile Fishing Show companion app will change the way you watch a show, but more importantly, it will change the way you educate yourself on crappie fishing. This is so much more than just an app. It will be your go-to source for weather, BrushPile fishing shows, crappie fishing tips, and your own handheld logbook. There will also be contact information for guides from past episodes, special offers from our sponsors, and tips that range from simple to advanced. Download the new BrushPile Fishing Companion app. It's free for Android and Apple users. It's everything a crappie angler needs. Make sure you check that out. All right, so there you have it, folks. The BrushPile app, completely free. Doesn't matter if it's Android or Apple. Make sure you get yours. Get it on the phone. Great features. And folks, I hope you enjoyed today's video podcast. Just wanted to talk about Ohio a little bit. Stay tuned. We'll be back again with another great guest on BrushPile Fishing, the video podcast.